Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Season 7, Episode 3 Game of Thrones recap. This is the episode called The Queen's Justice. Joining me tonight is Senior Albert Berg.
I'm Junior Albert Berg. Thank you very much.
I guess you are. You are literally Albert Berg Jr.
Now, that's debatable.
Or are you the third
and also not
or
important.
fifth?
Who are you?
Are you the sixth of your name? I'm Tony Southcott.
I'm like the second. The middle name throws it off.
Ah, the Timber.
Yeah, so that's, again, not relevant to anything anybody's tuning in to hear us say about Game of Thrones.
Yes, let's start out right where this one went to. Jon teleporting to Dragonstone.
Yeah, got that. You can travel real fast in between episodes, apparently.
To be fair, Dragonstone isn't as far as I thought it was. I looked at a map recently, and it's still a trip, but it's not quite that trip.
You know, it's not real also.
Yeah.
That's also a thing. Like, you can say it takes however long you want it to. They're 5 miles away.
Yeah.
It's fine.
It's just a nice little jaunt.
He gets there, and I really did enjoy this sort of game of wits that they end up playing, and how much. I mean, there's some stuff that gets truncated late at the end of this episode, and I'll complain about that. But it was nice to see this play out sort of in its entirety. Each little movement on the board. You know, you start off with give up your weapons. All right. Oh, they're taking our boat away. Oh,
yeah.
They just happen to have some dragons fly by over.
Yeah, that's not a show of intimidation or anything. Like, you know, it's going to be totally okay. My grandfather and uncle just got burned by the Mad King, you know? Like, we're okay.
Yeah, and then you get him in the throne room sort of negotiating. She's really looking forward to him to bow the knee, and he's really not interested in doing that at all.
Yeah, he's never seemed to be that interested in kneeling to anyone except for, like, whenever he did for the Night's Watch to take his oath. And he doesn't even feel comfortable as king either, so.
He got kind of burned on that one.
Yeah.
But you do, I mean, the essence of this conflict here is Jon Snow walks in and says, hey, dead guys are walking around, and they're led by some dude named the Night King. Can you spare some people in your very important army to go and fight these other guys that you've never heard of, and you've just now met me? I'm telling you, it's a real big deal. And she's like, no, you need to help me out. And he's like, no, this is a bigger problem. And neither one of them is really able to get very far.
Yeah, and it turns out that the advisors are the ones that really start getting it together. As usual, Davos always has something important to say and is really good at getting his point across, even though he almost gives a little bit too much of the game up.
Does that matter?
Not really, but if you want to be taken seriously, you can't have people thinking you've been resurrected, I guess. Although, in some way, she was...
If you're going to walk in and say, the dead walk...
Yeah, that's true.
It might help your case to be like, and I'm one of them. And if you don't believe me... Well, he doesn't know that the Red Woman's here.
That's true. I don't think he knows, like, unless he saw her brooding, which there's some awesome brooding in this episode. Some good commentary on brooding. But we'll get to that in a minute. But it really was fascinating that after so many years, we finally have those two in the same room. It's like almost watching a different series or a crossover episode whenever you get to see like Dany and Jon in the same spot.
And how, I mean, their goals could not be more different. I mean, she's still fighting the Game of Thrones. You know, she's still in this war with Cersei. You know, she's still got her mind on liberating these people. She's, you know, her machinations are on Casterly Rock right now. She's worrying about having lost her fleet, as we saw last episode. She gets the info about that sort of in the middle of talking to Jon, and so she's got a lot of, you know, what seem like really big concerns to her. And here's this guy saying, oh, by the way, zombies.
And your entire purpose is really, like, should be focused on the North, because none of this matters, and everything you've worked so hard for doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, and it's an interesting predicament for her. I don't know. I can't fault either one of these people for doing the way they did. You know, Tyrion obviously gets his chance to shine. He sort of talks to both of them and gets them to come to some kind of like, what's your point in the middle? What is, obviously I can't get you to believe in zombies, and I can't get you to just, you know, bend the knee. So what do you want that I can get for you? And It turns that was an interesting little turn of events, I thought.
Yeah, and it really worked with what was going on there. I also really enjoyed her little moment talking about like faith in her and the people and what she rose from, and how they both have come from just like these minor beginnings to being what they are now. They're not as minor as like Varys or Littlefinger or anything like that, but to be a bastard who's a king, and for her to go from like literally being or maybe not kidnapped, but taken as a baby to some foreign land and just uniting here together.
I mean, she might as well have been kidnapped.
Yeah.
It's also very interesting how much sort of history plays a part in all of this. She keeps calling up the fact that at some point in the past, the North pledged fealty to the Targaryens, and she's a Targaryen.
In perpetuity.
And, yes, in perpetuity. Her sort of great boss move of like, what does perpetuity mean? It means forever. Yeah, it means forever. I thought, I don't know exactly how the politics and the specifics of this work. If I was Jon Snow, I would have almost been saying, hey, listen, yeah, the Stark said that. Guess what? I'm not a Stark. I mean, he doesn't know the whole thing. I'm a Targaryen. Well, he doesn't know all that. He's both,
technically, but...
Okay, yes, but I'm saying he does. While he might have the blood in him, he's not officially part of Ned's line. He's the king because he got essentially elected king.
Yeah, it was kind of like the moot thing that the Ironborn hold.
Yeah, so I don't know. Again, I don't know the specifics of Game of Thrones, and of course, it is all just made up anyway, so it can be whatever you want it to be. But her whole thing of you owe me this because you're Ned Stark's son. Even if he was Ned Stark's son, I don't know that technically matters because he's a bastard.
Yeah.
He's not in Ned's household.
If Sansa or Brandon, who comes back in this episode, would have been there, it would have been a slightly different story, but he's not beholden to that. He doesn't even care about her war at all. So it's almost like an awkward meeting for her where she thought it was going to go so different.
Speaking of Sansa, I believe around this point we have a scene kind of flashing back to what she's getting up to in the North, and she's a pretty good leader.
Yeah, she's sitting there wondering why they haven't put leather on the breastplates to keep people warm for the long winter. She's trying to get supply lines for grain so that they can keep feeding Winterfell. Like, everything is kind of going in order, and she's being shadowed by Littlefinger, who's just dropping douche knowledge and, like, just basically pulling his Littlefinger game. We skipped over a few things, but we'll get back to it.
How Sansa handles him. Like, I think that is a lot of fun. How she's, she's not his underling anymore.
Definitely
she understands how to play the game. She understands what he wants. And, she's definitely bouncing back at him. But he does have, I think the advice that he gives her, for one thing, I think really gives us insight into who he is and what his, like, the way he plays this game, where he tells her, listen, you got to assume that everything has happened. Imagine all the possibilities and plan for all of them. And when they happen, you won't be surprised. And it's interesting that right after he tells her that, something happens that I don't know that anybody could have planned for.
Yeah, not even close to.
Back.
Like, she might have been able to know, or she might have thought Brandon might come back, but she didn't think he'd come back as the three-eyed raven who doesn't want to take his lordship and all this other stuff. Like, it's just a bizarre situation where she's sitting under the tree just confused by what the hell he's trying to say.
Well, I don't know that he knows what he's trying to say. He came back weird. I mean, he is not... I think... there is an argument to be made that he is 100% like a different character at this point, which I don't remember really seeing as much of in the previous season. Like, we kind of saw him escape from, the destruction of the previous Three-Eyed Raven by the dead, and I think a little bit of him running with, I forget the girl's name who's helping him out.
I think it's Mira Reed.
You're correct.
Yeah.
Or at least the Mira part, I believe, is right.
I'm pretty sure that she's the daughter of Howland Reed, who is one of Ed's best friends.
Okay. So that's, we saw a little bit of that, but now that he's back in his element, right, meeting back up with his family, it really was surprising to me that he doesn't, like, he's sort of emotionless. Not completely emotionless. You can tell that he's trying to process some stuff. As far as, he even talks to Sansa about having seen the night, of her wedding /rape. And in a really bizarre way where he talks about how beautiful it was and the snow falling and the dress, and it's like, dude, learn to read the room.
Yeah, his social skills have definitely taken a turn after being in the wilds for so long.
Well, I don't even think it's that. I think that he's, I mean, I said processing with that, but he's also, if what he's saying is true, he's got the information spigot turned on fire hydrant level, just blasting him in the face all the time.
Yeah,
and it's probably really difficult.
He's got the full 1,000-yard stare thing going on, too. She's crying and hugging him, and he's just kind of like, I'm here.
I'm glad to be back. Sorry, bad stuff happened to you, sis.
I'm sure my bed will be more comfortable. I don't know. It was just one of those where it didn't... It felt weird. I knew he was going to be coming back, or at least I knew we'd be seeing him soon, because like he showed up at the wall and everything. I didn't know they were just going to like bring him straight to Winterfell. It's the right move, I would assume, but I still think they would have sent a Raven, whatever. He's back, and we get to see a little bit of Sansa taking care of business.
Yeah.
We skipped over a huge portion that happened before that with Theon pulled from the ocean, which is not the big thing. He kind of gets shamed again for for being Reek again. They know that he wouldn't have survived if he would have tried to save his sister. Either they would have been saved or he would have died. So they pull him out, and then we get to see Euron taking his nice little lap through King's Landing.
With it, everybody clapping for him. I'm sure probably so that they'll get food from the queen later.
Probably.
They really want it. I think that the masses are probably very disappointed that they're not going to get to see somebody's head cut off. Like,
probably.
Yeah, great. Cersei. Yeah, you
Cersei could have obliged them with that, but she decided to take revenge in a much different way. We'll get to that in a little bit.
It was, you get your great revenge, but what about the people? You understand? They need their entertainment, okay?
That was one of the better lines that Euron talked about. He's like, they just like heads on spikes. I love every interaction with Euron and Jaime so far. It's just so perfect. Can you give me some advice?
So he knows everything that's going on. He's so passive. I guess passive aggressive is the right word. Not so passive, really.
Yeah, he's pretty aggro with it. The thing is, he also just delivered them a huge, huge victory. Like, whenever Daenerys was sailing over the Narrow Sea and everything looked like it was in place, this looked like it was a slam dunk victory. And the showrunners have decided to make that a much more complicated battle. And this episode really established that.
Yeah, we got some weird... I mean, obviously the reversal happened with that last week. And for some reason, I just didn't put together that was what he was doing. Like, yeah, okay, the defeat of the fleet is strategically a big deal. But I didn't think about Cersei's revenge being really what he's after. And I find interesting, despite the fact that he did deliver on his promise, and she's got a lot of stuff that she really wanted, she's not taken that offer of marriage yet, and he
took it in stride as well as you could expect, but like he's also cocky as hell, so he thinks he's just gonna have to wait a little bit.
Maybe there was that little moment where he just sort of really, okay, fine.
Yeah, I actually rewatched part of that scene because I was trying to gauge his reaction, gauge hers. Like, because I didn't actually hear. She said, "You'll have what your heart desires," and then it trailed off, and it was a little bit low. So it was just after the war. But he brought her, like, Ilaria Sands, which that's a bigger deal than I originally was thinking. Like, he killed the other Sand Snakes, which I'm sure people who love the show and hated them are happy that they're pretty much gone now. But that was a cold, not even so much interrogation scene, but what happens next after she has the sands.
Before we get to that, I just want to mention also, Cersei's dress in this scene is on point.
Yeah. She's becoming
those
like
spikes.
Yeah,
that's some nice fashion design.
Yeah.
Right there.
Well,
good costume work, guys.
Everything about the throne room is just turned dark. The Kingsguard are in all black. The carpet that they walk in on is all black. Like, I don't know if this is supposed to represent her mourning or if it's just like her style or what she's going for with it, but it's definitely working right now.
She also replaced all the 7-pointed stars with the Lannister lion. I did not catch that until someone pointed it out on Reddit, I believe.
Yeah, Reddit's a good place to catch the details.
Yes, if you look in the background of the windows, the I guess not technically windows, but where the light comes in, there used to be that big 7-pointed star behind this throne and in the openings of the throne room, and now they've got the lion because She ain't about that religion.
Yeah.
She's not worshiping the Seven.
Well, she
not worshiping anybody.
She ended a lot of the Seven's numbers. Like, I kind of wonder what's going on with that religion in King's Landing. That's something we haven't really had any insight into. Like, if there are priests just trying to, like, rebuild small sections for people to worship at. Like, I imagine there's a lot of turmoil over the crater of the Sept.
I feel like we're losing a lot of great detail work that we might have gotten in an earlier season because they're accelerating so quickly with these last couple seasons.
Just like it felt like there was a lot of long lingering scenes in this one, like where people were spending the time talking. But then, like, as far as the amount of action and the things that actually happen here, we saw a lot get done in this episode.
Yeah, I feel like the whole end battle, which I don't know if you want to get there yet. I mean,
we'll get there in a minute.
Okay.
Like,
what else do we got, Tony?
The next thing we see is Jaime and Cersei. They basically get back to hooking up. Jaime's trying to resist and just kind of falls back into it. Like, it's something where he's kind of reluctant because he doesn't fully agree with like what Cersei's doing, but it's also loyalty to family, loyalty to her, loyalty to just like the entire life he's led, and he's conflicted. But it's also like he's still falling into her trap a little bit. And she's actually making it so that it's full on, maybe not public knowledge, but like her little steward or whoever was in the castle, like taking it. She makes it very obvious they're hooking up. They're like, we're going to need more sheets. So.
Which for what they showed them starting doing, I don't know that you would need more sheets. I mean,
Jaime's a man of patience and control.
Fair enough. Okay.
And
she was all about. I thought that was interesting that she's like clearly on some kind of high after getting the sand snakes taken care of, putting them through their very
own medicine
designed torture. Although I'm glad we didn't get to see it. I mean, there's a lot of sort of people complaining about some of the violence on Game of Thrones, and some of that I don't jump on board all the way with the like, hey, they shouldn't show so much violence against women, but like I'm glad that this is just an idea that we get to have and not like just watching somebody scream and like writhe around on the floor and
it is very messed up what they're forcing Ilaria to see.
Yeah, but it wasn't like, oh, we're going to show the mountain raping somebody. I guess that I'm just glad we didn't go that direction. We already had that scene. That's great.
Yeah, Cersei we know the show's willing to do it. Sometimes
she has more creativity than that.
Yep. And like even if she would have had like the mountain pop skulls or anything like she threatened to do, like I don't know, there's a lot of mirroring happening in the episodes recently. Like even with the way this episode ends, there's kind of a mirror going on with it. Like as far as people's fates.
Yeah. I guess I can see that.
Because, I mean, like, Marcella's died of the same poison, and later in this episode, Olenna dies from the same poison she got Joffrey with.
I don't think it's the same poison.
Well, I'm not sure if it will be, because that poison was a lot more vicious and looked like it hurt.
Yeah, she makes a point to say, I didn't, like... Jaime says, I made sure this wasn't going to be painful, and she says, oh, good, because I didn't check that out, and... Maybe should have.
Yeah, we've got a lot to talk about with that particular scene, but we're going to save that for the end of the episode.
Okay.
Like, the next thing we see is the Braavos representative coming in, and Cersei basically being like, give me 2 weeks, and I will get you all your money, and you don't have anything to worry about. Invest in us.
Was that Mark Gatiss, by the way?
I didn't see. Like, I don't have the IMDb page open right now. I just have my notes in front of me. He looked familiar, but I'm not sure. What is Mark Gatiss in?
He's in Sherlock as Mycroft.
All right, I'll look that up right now if you want to talk about that scene.
Yeah, he plays. I've got it right now. He plays Tycho Nestoris, an envoy from the Iron Bank of Braavos.
Okay.
Her argument is pretty good, I would say. Like he's looking, the bank is looking to invest in who's going to win. She's already mortgaged to the hilt, but she needs to convince him not to go further, and. Her point that revolutionaries don't usually leave the bank standing is a pretty well-made one.
Yeah, like, especially because, like, the bank is usually best off whenever there's some consistency, and there's been a lot of inconsistency in the past couple of years as far as new kings, queens, violence, wars, all that sort of stuff. And if she can make this major attack happen and win this war, the consistency for them is going to be a lot better than a revolutionary that might have her dragons literally burn down the bank.
Yeah, the other thing is if for now this is sort of bad investment strategy, but you got the gamblers lost sunk cost fallacy here. They've already invested all this money in the Lannisters. If the Lannisters don't win, they're not getting any of that back.
That is very true.
So
who's gonna really pick up the tab whenever they come back? Like, I mean, I guess if you wanted to have credit with that particular bank, you'd be like, well, we have to pay our debts, and we'll eventually get to it.
So that's one way to look at it. Also, I don't know. I mean, she doesn't have a lot of leverage over the Iron Bank. Like, she can kill this guy, whatever his name is, Tycho, or I forget what I said it was. She can sure kill him, but I mean, that's not going to stop the bank from coming after her.
Yeah, especially because Braavos is pretty riddled with assassins and everything. Like, we know that the Faceless Men actually have worked directly for the bank many times, so it's kind of a dangerous person to try to cross, or a dangerous organization.
I'm trying to figure out what piece does she have to play that's in 2 weeks is going to get her enough gold to pay back all their debts in full.
I can tell you exactly what it was.
Oh, you think it's
They robbed Highgarden.
Fair enough. Okay.
Like, there's a point where you actually see Jaime walking through an area, and it's just gold bars on gold bars. They just straight up raided the war coffers and probably everything else from Highgarden. Like, they don't care if they leave all those people at the beginning of winter with no wealth.
I totally missed that shot. I know that once you said it, I was like, oh, I guess Highgarden does have some gold still.
Yeah, and
but I had forgotten.
I really like the way they actually did that scene where it's just Jaime single-minded marching through, through all the scenes just to get to where Olenna is. But we still have more to get to before that scene.
Okay. Let's keep going.
We have Tyrion brooding and Jon brooding, and basically
the brood off.
Yeah, the brood off, and Jon is always going to win that. Tyrion's had moments of brooding, but if he doesn't have alcohol, it's only going to take him so far, especially against Jon Snow, who's just notorious veteran for that.
Shout out to the scenery in this whole episode. But bringing up that brooding scene make me remember how great Dragonstone looks in this episode.
Yeah, there's just those cliffs and everything. I kept wondering if, especially with the conversation that Varys and Melisandre had, like, if she was just going to, dive off or something. But, those are some high cliffs.
Well, she seems to have... We didn't even get to that, but in that one scene where they had that conversation, she had some information from possibly the Lord of Light about when she was going to die and when he was going to die. I mean, she says we're both going to die in Westeros, and he looks super put off by that. I don't know if he was expecting to live forever or...
Well, there's a lot of weird conspiracies about him and magic and all this other stuff from the books that don't really make it into the show. They've made him more into an actual person for the people instead of kind of fully out for himself. And it's interesting to see that, but I think it's more that he's just disconcerted because she might actually have the details of his demise, not so much that he's going to die in Westeros.
Oh, well, no, I get that, but what does it matter?
Yeah.
If someone looked at me and said, I know how you die, I mean, I'm not sure I would want to know all the details, but, I mean, I get that probably is going to happen to me almost 100%, unless some, weird immortality invention happens with science in the next 30 or so years, probably.
Yeah, you and I have a max of 60 before that happens, and it's
30 years is short for me. I mean, that put me at 62. So
I'm just thinking about what if it was they stop aging, but you have to start it in your 20s, so we just get to watch all these people? That would suck. But that's a whole other weird conversation that's not related at all to Game of Thrones.
I just don't know. He looked real bothered.
Yeah.
Is all I'm saying. And I was surprised by that because, come on, Varys. It's going to happen.
Yeah.
All these people. Whether you win the war or not, eventually Daenerys Stormborn and Jon and all these people, they're going to die. They're going to have kids. Life's going to go on. They're going to turn into more myths. Who knows, how far down the road.
Yeah, 3 generations from now, they'll just have scrolls about you and maybe some songs, and nobody's going to remember what you were actually like.
And that's depressing. Anyway, what were we talking about? We got off track talking about cliffs and scenery. Oh, the brood off.
Yeah, the brood off, which it's basically the midpoint that you were talking about earlier, where they find out, or he tells them about the dragon glass. She says it's okay to mine, and basically that's a big thing that's decided there because that means the North is going to have a whole bunch of good obsidian weapons and arrowheads and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, although that's going to take some time. Time is a little bit weird in this episode. I don't know exactly how much of it passes.
Yeah, because I'm just thinking that the armies of the undead are walking towards the coast right now, from what we can gather from the Hound's vision and everything. And who knows how long that's actually going to take them to get there. So
well, we know that Cersei tells the bank it's going to be 2 weeks, and we can assume that that's about how long it takes for them to go get Highgarden.
Yep.
So I'm going to peg it that Jon Snow is not, at least by the end of this episode, has not been at Dragonstone for more than 2 weeks.
Yeah. So it's all kind of minor. And then we end up moving into the Archmeister and Jorah and Sam.
Yeah, which this plays out. This was maybe one of the weaker moments of the episode for me. It's just sort of like, yeah, Sam, you're cool. Get back to work. Jorah's going to go off back to his part of the plot now.
Yep.
But we're going to have our almost slow motion handshake and really put some meaningful music behind it, so you guys know these guys, they're probably not going to meet again.
That was probably the cheapest episode, or the cheapest part of the season so far, so I'm sure they just needed a little bit of time filler. I guess there was some special effects on him having all the scars and everything, but it's also showing like Sam's competence growing and all that. So like I get why the scene's in there. I didn't have a problem with it, but it's also not that notable.
They needed to resolve the plot point. I do understand. It's just sort of they even have to hand wave the whole like Sam was able to heal him. The guy's like, most people wouldn't be able to do that, but you were. And he's like, well, just follow the instructions. It's like, well, great. So either Sam is super maester, right? Like he's just the best on accident because he can read things and do them immediately without ever having practiced them, or all the other maesters suck. And I don't really love either one of those options.
I think it's somewhere in between. I think that he might have gotten a little bit lucky, and you also have a guy who's like a knight who is trying, like who all of a sudden has hope. Like he's got one last chance to survive, so maybe he's a little more focused, a little more ready to try. So,
maybe.
Like, as opposed to like a commoner who's never had to deal with a whole lot of pain or anything like that. So maybe it's just, it's a little bit of a reach there, but Jorah's got some constitution. He rolled well for that.
It was a critical hit.
But after that, we end up having Daenerys at Dragonstone talking about how she's tired of losing people and how she wants to just go burn their ships down, which basically would involve her flying over the ocean for a while.
This was a weird play. This is kind of the sort of plan that I would expect somebody from Reddit to come up with. Like, why doesn't Daenerys just fly around on her dragons until she sees the ships and then burn them all? Like, it's not a good idea.
Yeah, especially because it's a bigger fleet than you expect. Someone just sends one like properly shot catapult ball and it could kill a dragon. Like dragons are tough, but they're not invincible. And also, she's very squishy on top of them.
They don't know about the thing Cersei's doing. Right?
Yeah, the ballista.
The giant bow and arrow.
Yeah, if those are even on the ships yet, we have no idea. I haven't seen any indicator that they are, but I would be surprised if they don't show up on a ship at some point very soon.
But I'm just imagining her like flying and being like, well, I'm getting kind of tired. I ran out of food like a day ago. We're still over open water.
Go fish something for me and cook it, please.
Yeah, I guess they could sort of land and catch some cows or whatever.
Yeah, and they're probably not sailing that far from the coast, so she could probably ride up the coast a little bit. But that's not really like it's just a rush plan, and she ends up listening to her people and not doing it. Although it does sound like she's going to turn up the action in the next episode.
I do want to see somebody ride a dragon. Like, that is the thing I do want to see.
Yeah.
A little bit more of, but not like that.
Yeah. And next we actually enter into what's happening at Casterly Rock, which ended up being kind of a different style of battle scene than we've seen in Game of Thrones, where you've got Tyrion.
It's exactly the kind of style of battle scene we saw in Season 1.
Yeah, a little bit of that.
See much.
No, I'm talking about how you have Tyrion describing what would happen if they did the frontal assault, and instead of just having it be him telling them what would happen, you're actually seeing it acted out. And then you see that he's using that little crack in the wall for the sewer system that Tyrion designed to be able to get in there, and quoting Brom about impregnating the castle, basically.
Yeah,
I thought it was a cool sequence, but it also felt like it was too easy. But that was part of the point, is that they let him.
To be easy.
Yeah, they let him in. There were supposed to be 10,000 soldiers there, And kind of like what Rob did back in season 2 or 3, like he sacrificed a couple thousand to make sure that the diversion worked.
I felt like if they didn't have a lot of build up for that. I mean, I know that they talked in the previous episode about like we're gonna go after Casterly Rock, but it's just sort of okay. Here we're gonna do Casterly Rock stuff now.
Especially because the first time we've ever seen Casterly Rock on screen.
Yeah, and then it just instantly. Oh, well, we have it. Oh, no, they're in a different place. Oh, no, now we're in the different place with them.
And now we're watching all of our ships burn and the Unsullied are trapped in Casterly Rock.
It's really rushed, and I don't, like, nobody forced them to make this season 7 episodes long.
HBO did.
Nobody went up to HBO and put a gun to their heads and said, guys, if you don't make this a short season, we're going to kill your children.
Somehow they just had it cost $100 million and they're not able to get 10 episodes, but I think that's because the cost of certain cast members is getting a little high too.
Oh, you think that's it?
I think that's part of it.
Because it certainly wasn't on screen here. I mean, the battle scenes were okay, but not amazing.
Yeah, there were cool sequences inside that, like whenever they open the door and you see the Unsullied come in and fight there. But it's really not any sort of huge choreographed scene. Like, you see a couple one-on-one fights. You see some cool little battles, but you don't see the entirety of the battle and how it takes place.
It was just so short. Everything was so short. I mean, the Casterly Rock thing was one thing, but then the fight for Highgarden just isn't on screen at all.
Like, all you see, and the showrunners actually explained this in the thing after the episode.
I didn't watch that because I was late. I needed to get back to watching Five-Headed Shark Attack.
Yeah, it is Shark Week.
Yeah. Sharknado
Week, excuse me.
Get it right.
Check out our other content over at Human Echoes.
We will be covering Sharknado Week all week long.
But yes, like basically you see Highgarden off in the distance, you see Jaime marching his troops, and then you just see bodies being piled on each other, which was very much a season 1 thing to do. And they just said in the post-episode stuff that they just wanted to cut right to the chase because Highgarden was never known for being a city of warriors, that it was eventually going to fall, and that's why Olenna asked, like, how did we fight? And Jaime was like, as good as could be expected, kind of just a knock on...
They didn't... Listen, that's not cutting to the chase. That's cutting to the catch, okay? Cutting to the chase means you get rid of all the boring preamble stuff and go to the car chase part of the movie.
Yeah, cutting to the chase is really like what they were doing, where it all of a sudden showed them marching on Highgarden and then just skipping over the fight.
They got past the chase and went to the part after the chase where the people who got chased were talking about how good the chase was.
Yep.
And you guys could rewind a little bit. You didn't have to cut all that.
Yeah. And I wonder if the reason why they said that was budgetary reasons or just episode number reasons, but they easily could have turned that into an entire episode inside of itself. Especially because we haven't really got to see Jaime run like his command that well. We just kind of see, yeah, he won.
It seemed... I understand, in theory, the gut punch of, oh, we got Casterly Rock. Oh, that actually wasn't that important. And, Jaime talks about having learned from Robb Stark and how that you need to be where the enemy isn't and all this. Like, the strategy is cool, and the moment of we think we won but we didn't is cool. But the way it plays out in the episode did not work for me.
I think
that's my opinion.
It works well enough for me, but I did want to see more. Like, I wish that this would have been divided into like a full episode. Like, it could have been 8 episodes for the season.
Failure.
Yeah.
I'm not saying like this episode sucks, you guys. I hated it. It was the worst. It felt like it could have been better, and I wanted it to be better, and it wasn't, and I'm disappointed.
Yeah.
About that.
However, the last scene that we do get with Jaime talking to Olenna was pretty powerful. I liked that a lot. I
don't want to take any steam away from that because that was great.
But that would have been a great way to finish out like a battle episode too.
Yeah, if you've been able to have a whole episode devoted to something like, I don't know. Yeah. I mean, I do get like what they're saying. If you go to war with Highgarden, they're not going to win. So
especially when the Bannermen for the other, I'm trying to think. Yeah, the Tarleys were with the Lannisters there, so you finally see which side they chose to be on. So the most formidable fighters in the Reach have turned on Highgarden, so you get a little bit of that, but that's like all you get to see. You just see Randall riding his horse next to Jaime.
A lot of pieces off the table now.
Yeah, there's a lot of armies that have just all of a sudden been wiped out.
Again, nobody forced you guys to have a short season. I don't know. Like you're like, oh, we gotta hurry. We've only got 7 episodes. Anyway, that's my whining. But yeah, this final scene was great. There's a lot of, Jaime being respectful to Elena. Sort of treating her as best he can. I'm surprised that they killed her directly off at all. That just seems like, I mean, I know that Game of Thrones isn't afraid to have, one monarch kill off another, but especially with it being Jaime, you just sort of think monarchs don't, it's like chess rules. You don't kill the king. The king does not get captured. The king just gets knocked over.
Yeah.
And then the game's over.
Well, it's also that they talked about what they were going to do, and sometimes whenever you still have these people, it's best just to remove them from the game entirely.
I guess. I mean that makes sense. But, he's here. He's poisoning her personally. Like, he doesn't take her back to have a public execution. I don't know how that would work out. I guess that might not work out super well.
Yeah, it's odd that they would give her the option of dignity, like just to take her own life, basically, instead of being tortured, beheaded, put on a pike, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, and
I kind of wonder if Cersei actually wanted that, and Jaime just didn't want to see it, so he just gave her that vial.
Well, the great thing about this scene, I mean, there's a lot of little pieces here, but I mean, one of the amazing things was Elena and Jaime's discussion about Cersei, and Elena, attacking Cersei, and Jaime coming to her aid, and Elena realizing, oh, you're like actually in love with her.
Yeah.
Okay.
You
I get it now.
Poor man.
Yeah, she's the worst. You do understand that she's the worst, right? And he's like, no, she'll be fine. When she wins, it'll be okay.
It's like,
will
they wring their hands on how she built it, I think is how he said it. And
I mean, that's a great bit of sort of like making yourself feel good. But
yeah, it's a little bit of justifications.
No. Yeah, he just wants. Well, yeah, he just wants to make himself feel good about the fact that he's on her side. He knows he's wrong, and he knows. I mean, he knows she's wrong, but he can't let go of that. He can't stop himself from being on her side. I wish that there was a little bit more of that. I mean, you mentioned earlier the moment where she's gonna go down on him, and he's like, no, and then sort of gives in, and now he's here in Highgarden. I want more of like his conflict here. This is such an interesting idea that he is struggling against like what he knows to be right, and yet that he can't get away from his sister. I mean, I think we've seen it in previous seasons, but just to spell it out here is maybe not the best way to have that play out on screen.
Yeah, and I think we'll see more of that in the coming episodes, especially because this had a lot of different realizations for him. Like he didn't know that it was Olenna that actually had poisoned his son. Like all the way that played out, like that was such a good like last little revenge moment. She had nothing like she had nothing but that to end her life with, and you could just tell by the look on his face he had no idea, and he was just outright devastated.
Well, he also she gets the little dig in about just sort of, yeah, remember how terrible that was? So she already gets him like going, and then just drops that little bomb of, oh, by the way, yeah, that was me.
Yeah, right now I can see on Twitter that Tell Cersei is trending. And that's a very, very good moment for her to just kind of like walk away from the show on.
You needed, yeah, I don't think people would have rioted if Lady Olenna got something like terrible. Maybe rioted is not the right word, but this was a good ending for her. Maybe even a little bit fan servicey.
A little bit. But it also, like, with the way she's lived her life and the way she's been on the screen, like, even whenever she lost, she always had something kind of powerful to say about it, or something, like, to at least get the final word in.
I guess the Tarleys are going to have Highgarden now.
Yep. So, like, Sam's basically going to be, like, oh, he's not going to have anything to do with it because his dad has basically disowned him and he stole the weapon, and his dad would probably kill him if he came back. But that's it's kind of an interesting thing where he's going to be opposed on that side, like with everybody in Old Town and everything else happening. He's just going to be seeing that his family betrayed the family that they were closest to. But
in hindsight, taking Casterly Rock was not the best decision.
Well, they also didn't know that it was completely empty of gold and everything. Like, they thought there were going to be a lot of resources to be gained by taking it, as well as a straight-up insult to Cersei.
I was saying. I mean, it's not strategically important.
If there would have been 10,000 people there and they took it, possibly would have.
Well, yes, but I'm saying the location was not strategically important.
Yeah.
If they had 10,000 people there and they were able to march on King's Landing and take that, for one thing, if they were able to take King's Landing and if Tyrion's point about these people serving in fear of Cersei is true, once you take Cersei off the board, none of those people have a good reason to fight anyway.
Yeah.
I wonder if this is Tyrion letting a little bit of personal stuff interfere with his decision making.
It could be, but it also seemed like I don't know. That's a really hard question to answer with the evidence we've been given. He was already talking about how he was guilty for not predicting Euron taking out the fleet and everything. So he's definitely made some bad decisions since they've gotten to Dragonstone.
Well, hopefully he'll get back on top, because I'm kind of, while he is fun to watch and there are some great moments of humor in this episode, I want him to start really dishing out some good advice. And I think one of the things that suffered a little bit since they went off book is, in addition to just sort of we're hitting all the high points here, is we're missing a lot of Tyrion being this great strategist. He does pull together the alliance between Dany and Jon to a certain extent, but that's not that's not something that somebody else couldn't have done. In fact, I don't know. I find it difficult to believe that Jon didn't bring that up to start with and be like, well, at least give us the dragon glass, and her be like, what is that? I don't know. Okay, sure. Take as much rock as you want, dude.
Well, I think in that initial throne room meeting, they were just kind of focused on whose alliances were where and everything more than on the finer points. They were going to be there for a few days.
Yeah, there's a lot of posturing there, too.
Yeah, a little bit. But I get what you're saying, where it seems like Tyrion's not being used as, the mastermind or the guy that won the Battle of Blackwatch. Or is it Blackwatch or Blackreach? Blackwatch.
Blackwater. Yeah, I think
Battle of Blackwater, yeah. Blackwater Bay. You're not seeing that as much from him. He hasn't, really found good, solid footing in Westeros yet. So
he needs to get back on top.
Yep.
And the show needs to show us what it's spending all this money on. I hope it's not all just actors.
Well,
I want some.
It
cool
looks
battles.
like there's going to be some dragon battles in the next episode based on the episode preview. It looks like there's going to be some other major things happening. Daenerys has had it up to about as much as she can tolerate of not going and just breaking King's Landing. So
but are there going to be 5-headed shark battles in this next episode?
Well, there's going to be a lot of Dothraki, and we all know Dothraki don't like sharks very much.
Okay. Well, I think that'll do it for this episode. I need to go finish watching 5-Headed Shark Attack, Tony.
All right, and
to do my other review.
If you guys would like to leave some comments about what you think is coming up, what you thought of this episode, we'd love to hear it. So yeah, have an awesome night, and we will see you guys next week with episode 4 of season 7.
Bye.